Maya Rodriguez tucked her textbooks into her backpack as she left the campus library. The evening air felt cool against her skin after hours of intense studying for her biology midterm. She checked her watch, 9:15 p.m. Still plenty of time to get back to her dorm and review her notes once more before bed. She walked along the quiet street, mentally going through her study group's discussion points. Lost in thought about cell division and protein synthesis, she barely noticed the police car that pulled up beside her until the flashing lights caught her attention. "Excuse me, miss. I need you to stop right there," a stern voice called out. Maya turned to see Officer James Caldwell stepping out of his patrol car. His hand rested on his belt as he approached her with a suspicious glare. "Is something wrong?" Maya asked, confused by the officer's hostile tone. "We had a report of a theft at the convenience store 2 blocks from here. The suspect matches your description," Caldwell said, looking her up and down. "I'm going to need to see some identification." Maya's heart raced. "Officer, I've been at the library all evening with my study group. I haven't been anywhere near a convenience store." She reached for her wallet, moving slowly to show she wasn't a threat. "I can show you my student ID and—" "Hands where I can see them," Caldwell suddenly shouted, drawing his weapon. Terrified, Maya raised her hands, her backpack sliding down her arm and hitting the sidewalk with a thud. "Please, I wasn't doing anything wrong." "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Caldwell ordered, ignoring her protests. "This is a mistake. I've been studying all night. You can call the library. They'll confirm I was there." Despite her pleas, Caldwell roughly grabbed her wrists and clicked handcuffs around them. Several passers-by slowed down to watch, some taking out their phones to record the scene. Maya felt humiliation burning through her as tears welled in her eyes. "Officer, please check my student ID. My name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm a sophomore at the university. I've never stolen anything in my life. You can explain everything down at the station," Caldwell said dismissively, leading her toward his patrol car. "I have rights. Don't I get a phone call?" Maya asked, trying to stay calm despite her racing heart. "Sure, when we get to the precinct," Caldwell replied, pushing her head down as he guided her into the backseat of his patrol car. Through the metal grate separating the front and back seats, Maya watched her campus disappear as they drove toward the police station. Her mind raced through all the possible consequences, missing her exam tomorrow, having an arrest on her record, what her roommates would think when she didn't come home. At the station, Maya was photographed and fingerprinted like a common criminal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she repeatedly tried to explain the mistake to anyone who would listen. After what felt like hours, an officer finally led her to a phone mounted on the wall. With shaking fingers, Maya dialed the only number she knew by heart. "Dad? It's me," she said when the line connected, her voice breaking. "I need your help. I've been arrested for something I didn't do." On the other end of the line, Special Agent Victor Rodriguez set down his coffee mug with a sharp click. 22 years with the FBI had taught him to remain calm in a crisis, but hearing his daughter's frightened voice sent a cold fury through his veins. "Tell me everything," he said quietly, already reaching for his keys and badge. "I'm on my way." Victor Rodriguez gripped his phone tightly, listening to his daughter's trembling voice. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the background as Maya explained between sobs what had happened. His jaw clenched, but his voice remained steady. "Take a deep breath, sweetheart. I need you to stay calm. Tell me exactly which precinct you're at." As Maya gave him the details, Victor grabbed a small notebook and jotted everything down. 22 years at the FBI had taught him that documentation was crucial, especially in situations where emotions ran high. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't answer any more questions until I arrive. Just tell them your father is coming and you're exercising your right to remain silent." After hanging up, Victor stood motionless for a moment, processing what he'd heard. His daughter, who had never been in trouble a day in her life, handcuffed on the street like a criminal. The thought made his blood boil, but he knew anger wouldn't help Maya now. He changed quickly from his comfortable home clothes into a pressed shirt and slacks, clipping his FBI badge to his belt. Not to intimidate, but to establish credibility. On his way out, he called his supervisor, Special Agent Donna Chen. "Donna, it's Victor. I've got a situation with my daughter. She's been detained for a theft she couldn't possibly have committed. His voice was controlled but tense as he slid into his car. Do you need backup? Donna asked. Not yet. I'm hoping this is just a misunderstanding that can be cleared up. But I wanted to keep you in the loop, just in case. Keep me posted, and Victor, by the book, okay? Always, he promised, though his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. During the drive, Victor's mind raced through possibilities. Maya had said she was at the library all evening. There would be witnesses, maybe security cameras. The convenience store would have footage too. His FBI training kicked in automatically, plotting out how to gather evidence to clear his daughter's name. At a red light, Victor took out his phone and called Maya's study group partner, Lily. Mr. Rodriguez, is everything okay? Lily answered, clearly surprised by the late call. Lily, I need to confirm something. Was Maya with you at the library tonight? Yes, sir. We were studying for our bio midterm from 5 until just after 9. She left maybe 15 minutes before I did. Is something wrong? Maya's been detained by police. They're claiming she was involved in a theft at a convenience store. What? That's impossible. She was with us the whole time. Would you be willing to provide a statement confirming that? Of course, absolutely. We were sitting right near the main desk too. The librarians would have seen us. Victor thanked her and ended the call as the light turned green. One piece of evidence secured. As he pulled into the precinct parking lot, Victor took a deep breath. Years of FBI training had taught him to approach every situation methodically. Tonight, those skills would serve his daughter. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Victor approached the front desk. The officer looked up from his computer with a bored expression. I'm Special Agent Victor Rodriguez, FBI, he said, showing his badge. My daughter Maya was brought in earlier. I'm here to see her. The officer's posture straightened immediately. Yes, sir. Let me get the arresting officer for you. While waiting, Victor scanned the precinct, noting cameras, officers on duty, and the general layout. Old habits from decades of law enforcement work. 5 minutes later, Officer James Caldwell appeared, looking considerably less confident than he had when detaining Maya. Special Agent Rodriguez? I'm Officer Caldwell. I brought your daughter in for questioning regarding a convenience store theft. Victor looked him directly in the eyes. I'd like to see the evidence you have against my daughter, Officer Caldwell, and then I'd like to see my daughter. Sir, we have a witness description that matches. I'll need to see the official report, any security footage, and the witness statement. My daughter was at the university library with her study group from 5 to 9 p.m. today. I have a witness ready to confirm this, and I'm sure the library staff and security cameras can verify it as well. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. We're still processing the evidence. Then you're holding my daughter without sufficient cause, Victor replied calmly. That's a problem, Officer Caldwell. A serious one. Victor's tone remained professional, but his eyes conveyed a clear message. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The drive home from the police station was quiet. Maya stayed out the window, still processing the night's events. Victor kept glancing at his daughter, noting how she flinched slightly when a police car passed them on the highway. You okay? He asked softly. Maya nodded, then shook her head. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I couldn't call you. If I was just some random student with no connections. Victor tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The same thought had been burning in his mind since he'd seen those handcuff marks on her wrists. That's exactly why this can't end with just getting you released, he said. At home, Maya finally relaxed enough to sleep, but Victor sat at his kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. His laptop glowed in the darkness as he created a new folder labeled Caldwell Case. Morning light was streaming through the blinds when Maya found him still there, surrounded by notes. Did you sleep at all? She asked, pouring herself some orange juice. Victor rubbed his eyes. I'll sleep when I'm done. I've requested the bodycam footage from last night through official channels. I've also filed for Officer Caldwell's arrest record for the past 3 years. Can you just do that? With the right paperwork and justification, yes. Victor showed her a form on his screen. I'm not using FBI resources for a personal vendetta. I'm filing this as a potential pattern of civil rights violations. Over the next week, Victor's kitchen table transformed into an investigation headquarters. The bodycam footage arrived first, showing in painful detail how Caldwell had ignored Maya's repeated attempts to explain herself and offer identification. "He didn't even tell me why he was stopping me until after I was handcuffed," Maya said, watching the footage with her father. Victor nodded, making another note. "And notice how he never read you your rights." The arrest records arrived next, delivered by Victor's colleague from the bureau who owed him a favor. Victor spent nights analyzing the data, creating spreadsheets that revealed a disturbing pattern. "Look at this," he said, showing Maya a chart he'd created. In the past 3 years, Caldwell has made 146 stops for suspicious activity. Of those, 118 involve young people of color. And look at the outcomes. Only 23 resulted in actual charges, most of which were later dropped. Maya leaned over his shoulder, studying the numbers. "That can't be coincidence." "It's not, and it won't continue." The next day, Victor took a personal day from work and visited the convenience store that had reported the theft. The owner, a middle-aged man named Raj, was initially hesitant to speak with him. "I don't want trouble," Raj said, glancing around his empty store. Victor showed him a photo of Maya. "This is my daughter. Officer Caldwell detained her, claiming she matched the description of your thief, but the security footage shows someone completely different." Raj looked at the photo, then shook his head. "No, this is not the person. The girl who stole was much lighter, with straight hair. I told the officer this when he called for a description." Victor's pen paused over his notepad. "You told Caldwell that the suspect was lighter-skinned with straight hair?" "Yes, of course. I gave very clear description. I said she was tall, skinny, light skin, straight brown hair, wearing dark blue hoodie." Victor wrote this down, his suspicions confirmed. "Would you be willing to sign a statement about this?" Raj hesitated, then nodded. "I don't like liars, especially police liars. My cameras, they don't lie either." Back in his car, Victor called his supervisor at the FBI. "Donna, I need your advice on something unofficial." He explained what he discovered about Caldwell's pattern of stops and the discrepancy between Raj's description and Caldwell's claim about Maya. "Victor, this sounds like a clear internal affairs matter," Donna said. "You're too close to this. You know that." "I'm not asking to leave an investigation. I'm asking how to make sure this gets a fair hearing." There was a pause on the line. "I have a contact in their IA department. Good person, takes these things seriously. I could reach out, unofficial capacity. That's all I'm asking." That evening, Victor showed Maya everything he'd gathered. The kitchen table was covered with printouts, charts, and witness statements from other students who'd had similar experiences with Caldwell. "What happens now?" Maya asked. Victor closed his laptop. "Now we let the system work the way it's supposed to. No shortcuts, no special treatment. Just evidence and procedure." Maya looked uncertain. "Will that be enough?" "It has to be," Victor said. "Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" He gestured to his FBI badge sitting on the table. "The badge isn't about power, Maya. It's about responsibility. If I use it to go after Caldwell personally, I'm no better than he is." Maya nodded slowly, understanding what her father was really teaching her. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. 3 weeks after Maya's detention, Victor sat in a sparse meeting room at the Internal Affairs Division of the local police department. Across from him sat Detective Olivia Ramirez, a serious woman with 20 years of experience investigating police misconduct. "Thank you for compiling all this, Agent Rodriguez," she said, flipping through the thick folder he provided. "Most people wouldn't have been this thorough." "Most people don't have the training I do," Victor replied, "or the motivation." Ramirez nodded, studying the spreadsheet showing Caldwell's pattern of stops. "This is concerning, very concerning. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to pursue this? Officer Caldwell has friends in the department. This won't be easy." Victor leaned forward. "My daughter still has nightmares about being handcuffed on a public street. She flinches when she sees a patrol car. And she's one of the lucky ones she had me to call. What about all these others?" He tapped the list of names he'd compiled. Ramirez sighed, but there was respect in her eyes. "All right, I'll open a formal investigation. But this stays by the book. No shortcuts, no special FBI influence. You understand." "That's exactly what I want," Victor said. The system working like it should. On his way out of the building, Victor nearly collided with Officer Caldwell in the hallway. For a moment, they stood face to face, recognition flashing in Caldwell's eyes. "Agent Rodriguez," Caldwell said stiffly. Victor nodded but said nothing, continuing past him. This wasn't personal, it was procedural. The evidence would speak for itself. That evening, Maya invited a few friends from her study group over for dinner. Victor noticed how they all seemed protective of her, creating a buffer against the world that had suddenly seemed much more threatening. "Dad, Lily was saying her cousin had something similar happen last year," Maya said as they cleared the dishes. Lily nodded, her expression serious. "He was stopped 3 times in 1 month near campus. Same vague reasons, matching a description, looking suspicious. Nothing ever came of it." "Did he file a complaint?" Victor asked. "He tried. Nobody followed up." Lily shrugged, as if this was expected. "That's just how it goes, right?" The resignation in her voice bothered Victor more than anger would have. These young people had already accepted a system that failed them regularly. "It doesn't have to be," he said, "not if enough people speak up." After Maya's friends left, Victor received a call from Ramirez. "We've issued a formal notice to Caldwell about the investigation," she said. "I thought you should know. He's claiming you're using your FBI position to harass him because of a personal grudge." Victor had expected this. "The evidence speaks for itself, Detective. The pattern was there long before he ever encountered my daughter." "I know, but he's hired union representation. This is going to get messy." The next day, Victor's supervisor called him into her office. Donna Chen's expression was concerned as she closed the door. "I've received a complaint from the police union about you," she said without preamble. "They're claiming you're conducting an unauthorized investigation using bureau resources." Victor had prepared for this. He placed a folder on her desk. "Everything I've done has been on my own time, using public records requests that any citizen could file. I've kept meticulous logs separating my work hours from this matter." Donna reviewed the documentation, nodding slowly. "This is exactly what I'd expect from you, Victor. But you need to understand. There's pressure coming from above. The police chief and our director play golf together. Are you asking me to back off?" "I'm asking if pursuing this is worth the potential cost to your career." Victor took a deep breath. 3 nights ago, I found Maya checking the locks on our doors for the 3rd time before bed. She used to sleep with her window open. Now she checks it twice before turning out the lights. He met Donna's eyes. "If I back down because of political pressure, what lesson does that teach her about justice?" Donna's expression softened. "I had to ask. For the record, I agree with what you're doing." She slid the folder back across the desk. "Just keep everything above board. Don't give them anything they can use against you." That evening, Victor received an unexpected call from Raj, the convenience store owner. "Mr. FBI agent, 2 police officers came to my store today. They asked many questions about my statement to you. They suggest maybe I was confused about what I told first officer." Victor's grip tightened on the phone. "Are you being pressured to change your statement, Raj?" "They say they just want to clarify the record. But I have security cameras in my store." I recorded our conversation. Raj's voice hardened with determination. "I don't change my story for anyone. Not in this country." After hanging up, Victor added this new development to his notes. The pattern was expanding, not just profiling civilians, but now attempting to intimidate witnesses. Maya found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers again. "Is it worth it, Dad?" she asked quietly. "All this trouble?" Victor looked up at his daughter, brave, intelligent, and undeserving of what had happened to her. "Some fights choose you, Maya, and when they do, backing down isn't really an option." The internal affairs hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. The sky outside the municipal building hummed gray and heavy with the promise of rain as Victor straightened his tie and checked his watch. "Ready?" he asked Maya, who stood nervously beside him in a simple blue blazer and black pants. "Not really," she admitted, "but let's do it anyway." Inside, the hearing room was smaller than Victor had expected. A long table faced a row of chairs, with a court reporter stationed in the corner. Detective Ramirez nodded to them as they entered, her expression professional but supportive. Officer Caldwell sat on the far side of the room with his union representative, a heavy-set man with thinning hair who was shuffling through papers. Caldwell refused to make eye contact. The hearing will begin in 5 minutes, Ramirez informed them. The panel consists of 2 captains and a civilian oversight member. As if on cue, the door opened and 3 people entered, 2 older men in police uniforms with captain's bars and a middle-aged woman in a charcoal suit. "That's Helen Wong," Ramirez whispered. "She's tough but fair. Good sign that she's on the panel." The hearing began with formal introductions. Captain Rivera, the senior officer presiding, explained the process in a monotone voice that suggested he'd done this many times before. "This is not a criminal proceeding, but an administrative review of conduct. Both sides will present evidence, witnesses may be called, and the panel will deliberate on appropriate action, if any." Maya squeezed her father's hand as the union representative made his opening statement. "Officer Caldwell is a dedicated public servant with 8 years on the force. This complaint represents a personal vendetta by an FBI agent using his position to intimidate a local officer who was simply doing his job." Victor kept his expression neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. When it was Victor's turn to speak, he stood and approached the table with a folder of documents. "I'm not here as an FBI agent," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here as a father whose daughter was wrongfully detained, and as a citizen who discovered a disturbing pattern of similar incidents." He opened the folder and distributed copies of his analysis to the panel members. "Over the past 3 years, Officer Caldwell has detained 118 young people of color on vague suspicions. Only 19% of these stops resulted in charges, most of which were later dismissed. This isn't about one mistake. It's about a pattern of behavior that violates department policy and public trust." The civilian member, Wong, leaned forward, studying the documents with focused attention. "This is quite detailed, Agent Rodriguez." "The facts speak for themselves," Victor replied. The first witness called was Raj from the convenience store. He entered nervously but spoke with clear conviction. "I told Officer Caldwell the suspect was light-skinned with straight brown hair," he stated, pointing to the security footage playing on a small screen. "The girl he arrested looks nothing like this person." Caldwell's representative tried to suggest Raj might have been confused or unclear in his description, but Raj stood firm. "I have been in business 23 years. I know how to describe people clearly." The officer didn't listen because he already decided who he wanted to stop. Next came the bodycam footage. The panel watched in silence as the video showed Maya repeatedly trying to explain she'd been at the library, offering her ID, and Caldwell ignoring her. Maya was called to testify next. She described the experience in a voice that occasionally trembled but never broke. "I kept trying to tell him I was a student, that I had ID, that there were people who could verify where I'd been. He didn't even look at my student card." She took a deep breath. "What scared me most wasn't being handcuffed. It was realizing that nothing I said mattered. I wasn't a person to him, just a suspect who matched some vague description." One asked Maya several follow-up questions about how the experience had affected her. Maya described her new anxiety, her nervousness around police, and how she now took different routes across campus to avoid certain areas. When Caldwell finally took the stand, his demeanor had changed from the confident officer who had detained Maya. He shifted in his seat and frequently consulted with his representative. "I was responding to a theft call and looking for a suspect," he insisted. The witness description matched her generally, and she was in the vicinity of the incident. Captain Rivera leaned forward. "Officer Caldwell, we've seen the security footage from the store and heard from the witness. The actual suspect doesn't resemble Ms. Rodriguez beyond both being young women. How do you account for this discrepancy?" It was dark. "I made a judgment call based on the information available at the time." Victor watched as Wong flipped through his spreadsheet analysis again. "Officer Caldwell," she said, "can you explain why nearly 80% of your suspicious person stops involve young people of color when our community demographics don't reflect those numbers?" Caldwell's face flushed. "I don't target anyone. I go where the calls take me." "The data suggests otherwise," Wong replied simply. As the hearing neared its conclusion, the storm outside finally broke. Rain lashed against the windows as Victor made his closing statement. This isn't about punishment. It's about accountability and ensuring this pattern doesn't continue. No one should be detained based on vague similarities rather than reasonable suspicion. My daughter was lucky she had someone to call. Many others don't. The panel adjourned to deliberate, leaving the room in tense silence. Maya leaned against her father's shoulder, exhausted from the emotional testimony. "You did great," Victor whispered. "No matter what happens next, you stood up and told your truth." Maya nodded, watching the rain stream down the windows. "That's what you taught me to do." The panel's decision came 3 days after the hearing. Victor received the call from Detective Ramirez while helping Maya study for her rescheduled biology exam. "They've reached a conclusion," Ramirez said. "The panel is recommending a 30-day suspension without pay for Officer Caldwell, mandatory retraining on proper detention procedures, and 6 months of supervised patrol." Victor's grip tightened on the phone. "That's it? After everything we showed them?" "There's more," Ramirez continued. "Because of your statistical analysis, they're also recommending a department-wide review of stop procedures and implementing new documentation requirements. Captain Rivera specifically mentioned your data as compelling evidence of a systemic issue that requires addressing." After hanging up, Victor shared the news with Maya, who sat quietly for a moment, processing the information. "Is that good enough?" she finally asked. "It doesn't feel like enough." Victor stepped beside her at the kitchen table. "In one way, no. Caldwell deserved harsher consequences for what he did to you and others. But the broader changes might prevent this from happening to someone else." Maya nodded slowly. "I guess that's something." 2 weeks later, Victor was surprised to receive a call from Captain Rivera. "Agent Rodriguez, I wanted to inform you personally that Officer Caldwell has resigned rather than accept the disciplinary measures. Also, we've had 3 more complaints filed against him since your hearing. It seems your daughter's case opened a floodgate." Victor felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "What happens now?" "We're implementing those departmental changes immediately," Rivera said. "And I'd like to ask for your help, if you're willing." "My help?" "Your analysis of our stop data was eye-opening. We're establishing a community oversight committee, and we could use someone with your expertise. Not as an FBI agent, but as a community member who understands both sides of law enforcement." The request caught Victor off guard. "I'll consider it." After the call, he found Maya in the living room, highlighting notes for her final exam. "Caldwell resigned," he told her. "And they want me to help with new oversight procedures." Maya looked up, surprised. "Are you going to do it?" "I'm thinking about it. What do you think?" She considered for a moment. "I think you should. Not because of what happened to me, but because of all the others who didn't have an FBI dad to fight for them." That weekend, they were surprised by a knock at their door. Victor opened it to find Lily and 5 other students from campus standing on his porch. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Rodriguez," Lily said, "but we wanted to talk to you about something important." Maya invited them in, curious about their unexpected visit. "We've started a student advocacy group," Lily explained, handing Victor a printed flyer. "After what happened to Maya, we realized how many of us have had similar experiences but didn't know what to do about them." Another student named Dev spoke up. "We're collecting stories and data like you did, but we need help understanding how to present it effectively." Victor looked at the young faces around his living room, determined, hopeful, unwilling to accept injustice as inevitable. He felt a surge of pride, not just in Maya, but in her entire generation. "I'd be happy to help," he said. Over the next few months, the student advocacy group grew. With Victor's guidance, they documented dozens of cases of questionable stops and detentions, not just by Caldwell, but throughout the local police force. Their work caught the attention of local media and eventually the mayor's office. By spring, Victor had accepted the position on the oversight committee. At their first public meeting, he watched with quiet satisfaction as the police department unveiled new policies requiring detailed documentation for all stops, regular analysis of racial disparities, and improved training. After the meeting, Maya waited for him in the lobby of City Hall. "How does it feel?" she asked as they walked to the car. "Making actual changes happen." Victor thought about the question carefully. "It feels like doing my job, just from a different angle. Law enforcement should protect everyone equally." Maya smiled. You know, when this all started, I thought you'd just go in and flash your FBI badge and scare everyone into punishing Caldwell. That would have been the easy revenge. Easy, but not lasting, Victor replied. Real change takes time and persistence. As they drove home, Victor noticed Maya no longer tensed up when they passed a police car. It was a small thing, but important, the beginning of trust being rebuilt. I'm thinking about law school, Maya said suddenly. Not just because of what happened, but it definitely influenced me. There's so much work to be done on how the system actually functions versus how it's supposed to work. Victor glanced at his daughter with pride. If this was the ultimate outcome of that terrible night, Maya finding her purpose and becoming an advocate for justice, then perhaps everything had unfolded exactly as it should have. The best revenge isn't punishment, he said quietly. It's making sure the same thing doesn't happen to someone else. Maya nodded, watching the city lights pass by outside her window. That's not revenge at all, Dad. That's justice.